We're live.
What's going on? How you guys feeling? What's up, champions?
Great and grateful.
Okay,
Yes, yes, yes.
okay. Here we go. Team of possibilities, national, international, intergalactical, worldwide book club. Guys, I'll tell you something. I'm so excited that we are back in full effect. And listen, it's an honor and a distinction to be on this platform with my Mastermind Alliance. It's very special. You know, this is a great broadcast. It's about reading because leaders read. Leaders are addicted to personal growth and development. We are growing. We are changing. We are evolving. We are going through a literary metamorphosis. Okay. We are caterpillars floating and becoming godly butterflies because of this process. What's up, Shelley Felton? Listen, I want to just say to everyone in the world that's watching this broadcast, please like it if you like this broadcast. Share it to your friends and family. Share it on your timelines and leave comments because we are going to acknowledge your comments. We will talk about them. We'll give you your shout outs. Man, I'm so excited. I am so excited. And what I want to do right now is I'm not going to do it any justice. So I'm going to let this distinguished panel introduce themselves. Let's celebrate these great leaders. Let's start with Dr. Atkins. Oh, looking so amazing in that cream hat. I don't know what's going on, but you guys look good with all capital letters. Dr. Atkins, please tell the world who you are, what you got going on, and where did you get that hat from?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Reverend Dr. Shanti Atkins. I am the senior pastor of Antioch Baptist Church in the village of Harlem. Also the chaplain with the New York City Police Department, as well as New York City Transit. And I am an executive here at TAVA, executive director here at TAVA.
Okay, now, make it clear, make it plain. Okay, and tell those police to stop, to chill out. Okay, they're wilding out there in New York. Tammy Durden, also looking stunning and sophisticated. Tell the world, who are you? What you got going on? And where'd you get that hat from?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Mr. Browning, for allowing me to share this platform. I am Tammy Durden, executive pastor of New Faith Praise and Worship Center Church right here in Houston, Texas. I am also the image maker. I help women look and feel amazing. I am your health and wellness advocate and also a director too right here at Tava Nation.
Awesome. You know, one thing I've learned about powerful women, they don't want you shopping where they shop. They don't want you knowing where they got their stuff from. That's what I'm getting from this intro. Amazing information collected. Last, but definitely not least, the wonderful, the incomparable Dr. Leon, Sharita Leon, calling out of New York. Please tell the world, who are you? What you got going on? And I won't even ask you to tell them where you got the necklace from, the hat from, because I know they're not going to get that information. Go ahead and tell the world what you got going on.
Great evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Browning, for having me to be a part of this dynamic panel. I am Sharita Leon, hailing out of New York City. I am a two-time #1 best-selling author, international speaker, the protege of the legendary Les Brown. I am a coach. I am a mother. I am a lady who helps you live your God-given purpose and create wealth at the same time, and an executive director here at TAPA.
All right, now, that sounds good to me. Ladies, one question. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Listen, I got to tell you something. This book has been amazing. For those who don't know, the installment of this season, everybody got their tool? Everybody got their empowerment tool? Ladies and gentlemen, Dale Carnegie, the masterpiece. How to Win Friends and Influence People. For who out there thinks it's important to win friends? I mean, you'd have to be a loser not to understand the power. I mean, it's just the truth, guys. It's just the truth. Something has to be wrong with you, but that's okay because we all need therapy, and you got to go through that process and get the joy back in your life. No. I say the word loser, but there could be that losing complex that you have with humanity could be the result of abuse. It could be the result of trauma. No, I'm very serious. It could be the result of high egotism. It could be the result of low self-esteem. Okay, it could be an issue, because what I'm trying to tell you guys right now through such a harsh and crass word is that we all have these complexes that are keeping us out of our godly consciousness. Because if you want to win friends, that's a Christ-like consciousness. That's a beauty that's inside of you. That's a winning vibration that's inside of you. If you want to be able to influence people, I mean, hey, there's a lot of different types of influence, but we stand for entrepreneurship. We stand for health and wellness. We stand for financial freedom. We stand for personal growth and development. So in this panel, when we talk about investigating influence, we're bringing people on a path of greatness. So to be able to win friends and build new healthy relationships, and to be able to influence people into positivity, so they can accomplish their goals and their dreams, because we're leaders and we're mentors and we have pastors on here. That's a very righteous assignment, right? And your heart's got to be pure. And a lot of times we go through so many things in life that we could care less about winning a friend. We could care less about influencing. We get cold, right? And that's not a good disposition to be in. You got to fight through it. And that's why I love this book so much, because it's taking us back to a beautiful place, a beautiful place where it was natural to love on one another. It was a beautiful place where it's natural to care about one another. A beautiful place where we would use strategies to spark our humility and to put our egos on the back seat. That's what this thing is about. Okay. And so we go into part 3 of this book, and we talk about how to win people to your way of thinking. And there's quite a few segments here. And I just love what we're learning. I love the fact that we are learning how to become better at what we do. So the first principle of many, and we'll see how many we can cover in this broadcast, it starts off with you can't win an argument. And I love this one. I want to ask you something, Sharita. It says there's a divinity that shapes our ends. This is just the last sentence on the first page, 109. Page 109, you can't win an argument. And the last sentence is a very interesting quote that says there's a divinity that shapes our ends. Rough hew them how we will. I want to ask you if that quote caught your attention, and what did you get from that quote? And then I want to talk about this first passage where the gentleman thought his quote was coming from the Bible, and the other gentleman was arguing that it came from Shakespeare. I want to just start off with you, Sharita. Tell me what you think about that first quote, and how the gentleman dealt with the whole Shakespeare versus the Bible situation. Let's get started.
Well, there are a lot of quotes that people think are in the Bible and they're not. Like, for example, this too shall pass. People say things like that and think it's an actual scripture, but it's not. But, it's amazing how there is that, divinity side of us that we oftentimes negate because we want to be right. Just like in the chapter before it talks about, admit when you're wrong. And that's something that's not always an easy thing to do because our ego is involved. And sometimes we associate being wrong and identify with it. So now if I gave the wrong information, if I was, off in the content, then that means there's something wrong with me, that I was, off in that area. So being able to tap into who we actually are as opposed to how we feel sometimes makes it that much easier. And if you're moving from a place of divinity, you're operating more from love and caring more about the other person than yourself.
Good. Dr. Atkins, how about you? Page 109. I want to ask you something. What did that quote mean to you? This is how we were starting off. How does it relate to this idea? You can't win an argument, but he's talking about as individuals, there's a divinity that shapes our ends. And it says, rough hew them how we will. I know what I got from that. What did you get from that?
Well, basically allow them. You don't have to win the argument, let it go. And when he talked about the passage in scripture regarding that being scripture, like Sharita said, how often do we misquote things and then people want to correct them? And it can be embarrassing. And so sometimes you just gotta let it go and in love, walk in a spirit of love and humility, and not as a person that knows it all.
Right. Let's get everybody's opinion on this. Pastor Durden. So this gentleman mentions a quote from the Bible, but they say that he was wrong. The quote didn't come from the Bible. The quote came from Shakespeare. And so the gentleman's sitting there and he's saying, he was wrong. This is what he's saying in his mind. I knew it. I knew it positively. There couldn't be the slightest doubt about it. And so to get a feeling of importance and display my superiority, I appointed myself as an unsolicited and unwelcomed committee of one to correct him. That is crazy, right? And this is what we're talking about. People, this is what happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, here's where we're going with this. Every time you give your opinion and you correct someone, this is what you're doing. You want to display your superiority. That's an issue. You want to fulfill this desire to be important, which we all do, but why on somebody else's time? And we're appointing ourselves to give an unsolicited and unwelcomed committee to correct someone else. What did you get about that? Same question. I just wanted to read actually what transpires so people can kind of be where we are with this, where you're sparking these arguments for the wrong reasons. What did you get from that?
Mr. Browning, one of the things that I keep hearing over and over in this book with every story is humility, humility, humility. Putting your ego aside, because your ego says, I'm going to correct this person and let them know, this is not right. That didn't come from the Bible. But when you display humility, and sometimes you just got to let people make it. We want to correct people so bad. We want to show people how much we know, all of that. But sometimes you just got to let people make it. You don't have to correct them on the spot, even if you pull them to the side later and have a conversation. But it is really about humility, and it's really about caring about the other person. When you set yourself aside, how is me correcting them right now going to impact them? Is it going to impact, their mood, their feelings, their ego? And so when you set yourself aside and say, you know what, I'm going to let this person make it. I know it's not right, but that's okay, because I'm setting myself aside and I'm prioritizing that person.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Dr. Leon, on page 110, it says, you can't win an argument. You can't, because if you lose, you lose. And if you win, you lose. Why do you think they framed it that way? What did that mean to you? Break that down to the audience.
Absolutely. Because while you can be right in the argument, and even if you won in your sight, you said it, you proved your point, you've lost something in that person, whether it's their comfort, whether it's their trust, whether it's their ability to want to continue a relationship with you, you've lost it. So it's like, what is the main point here? If what you're trying to bring to that person is not going to hurt them in any way, or if they're wrong and they're walking down a cliff, then obviously, you don't have to try to win that argument. But if at the end of the day, it's more so just to feel validated, you've lost it. So whether, you get into, I think I heard Pastor Sean say this before, you could be in a relationship and you can either be right or be effective. And so let it go. If at the end of the day, you find a way to bring light to where people can understand and want what you're sharing, then so be it. But if not, what's the point? To be frustrated and say, yes, I won, and then at the end of the day, they don't want to be around you anymore? Like, nobody wants that.
Right. Why not let a person save face? Especially when they didn't even ask your opinion in the first place. Always avoid that. And so, Pastor Sean, one of my favorite quotes, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I've been saying that so long I could never have remembered where it came from, and now to read it here, I'm just like, oh wow, this came from this book. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. What does that mean to you? Can you elaborate on that quote?
Well, I made a note here, basically you're not winning, you still are, there's no growth. I wrote here, avoid verbal fights, that you gotta, when you convince against your will, you're still in the same opinion because nothing has changed. You're just agreeing to appease the person and not because you agree. And how often do we pacify people, just to make them feel good, about themselves. But you still have the same opinion. It's just like the kid who, is in the corner. He says, I might be standing, but I'm still sitting down inside. And so you're not winning.
I wish a little kid would say that in my presence. That would be, I don't know how I'd handle that. So good. So let me ask you something. Pastor Durden, what does this mean to you? Just a question. What would you rather have? They call it an academic, theatrical. I should have saved this for Dr. Leon. A theatrical victory or a person's goodwill?
Of course, a person's goodwill. I'm at heart genuinely a people person and care about people. And so, what I've always found is that people are more interested in themselves. And so I think that me having, this theatrical win and coming out on top, and, while the other person, feels less than, and those types of things, is not really building that person up. I'm a people builder. So it's important to build people up and to make sure that I'm imparting good things into their lives where they're confident, they feel better about themselves. And so it takes me out of the equation, and it's definitely all about the other person.
Really? And I always heard that women like to argue, and that's not true.
It depends on the woman.
Oh, okay. That's true. No. I'm just asking honestly. Have you guys never heard that cliche? Men don't often report that. So I wanted to just ask why is that? Because there's this feeling that men can shut down and not listen and not pay attention, or they can take important situations and act dismissive as if they're not important, and that creates more arguments. I just want to hear what's that's all about, because I've heard that. Go ahead, Sharita.
Don't do that. This is the thing, okay? We have different languages. Men and women respond differently. So while women, we want to express ourselves, we want to be able to, share what the issue is and break it down. Men most of the time are solution based, and so they just want to get to the point. How do I fix this? And then the other aspect is they don't always want to talk. They don't necessarily, emotionalize and verbalize what they're going through. And so if they're upset about something, they'll probably go to the man cave and deal with it themselves. And then when they feel like they have a solution, then they may come back and say something. They may go off for a walk or wander around. They're not the type typically to come and converse about what's going on. Whereas women, most of us, something's going on. We want you to know what's going on. We want to get an understanding. We want you to hear us. And so to a man who doesn't want to talk and feels pressured into a conversation about how you're feeling about something, now he sees it as an argument. But in actuality, it's just two different languages not meshing.
That's good. Thank you. We needed that.
I'd like to add to that, at the bottom line is women want to know that they're heard, they're being heard. And so often,
say it again, Pastor Sean.
They want to know that you're hearing them and that you understand what they're saying. And when they don't, they become frustrated. And I think that, like Rita said, we talk two different languages, and a lot of times men have a difficulty emotionally connecting to women. And it's a lack of understanding of how God created us.
Wow, it can go in. This conversation can run anyway. It can get deep right now. I better blow the whistle. Woo! Listen, because at the end of the day, boy. But
You can't handle it.
it comes down to I respect that because we all want to be validated. We all want to be understood. We all want to be validated. It creates a sense of importance and it makes you feel respected. So I get that. So shame on all the men out there who are not validating their partners by being great listeners and not acknowledging those points of views other than your own. Shame on you, gentlemen. All right, good stuff. Okay, so now as we move forward, one thing I'd like to share before we move off of this one topic. You know, I would like to ask you, and if you can take on with this, Pastor Sean, and anybody else who wants to just jump in, it's like, you know, you can't win an argument. That's the lesson here, guys. Write it down. You can't win an argument. It's not necessary. And this is a great way of perceiving it. But Pastor Sean, remember the situation where the tax consultant comes to meet with him and they have this amazing standoff because he's trying to convince the tax, assessor that, man, no, this file on my report, man, that's nothing but debt. That $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, that's debt. I can't pay taxes on that. And the expert, just took that energy and got really brolic and got really strong and got really arrogant and got really disciplined. And the argument pursued. And well, I won't say, read it. I mean, what did you get from that? And can you share with the audience how that got turned around?
Oh, I forgot that incident. So you got to just brush me up on it.
Thank you for your honesty.
I vaguely remember that.
Well, here's what happened. Okay. Anyone else want to take a stab at it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Sharita.
So this is when the guy from Chicago, correct? So he was in Chicago. So pretty much what happens is he has this that he's really upset, and he goes and explains how, this is wrong. You can't be doing this. So initially the person he spoke to was like, well, this is what you have to do. This is it. You have to pay for it. So he let it. He was still upset. So he came back to Chicago where he was from, and they go and he decides to come back to speak on it. So this time the gentleman says, well, you know what? Let me hear him out. Let me hear what he's saying. And he listens to what he's saying, and he offers to take him to lunch or something to that effect. And so he comes back. He listens to him. He was surprised that he listened and didn't go back and forth with him. And so afterwards, what happens is he goes back home. He looks over his paperwork, and he realizes that he was wrong. And then he comes back and is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it. And he kept the business with him as opposed to not going back, even though he was wrong, because he was willing to listen and not, badger him.
Awesome breakthrough. Now that's a different story that does happen in this book somewhere, but not here. But that's a great lesson. Thank you so much, Dr. Leon. Now, let me go ahead and catch you guys up to speed. What happened was the tax assessor came to this man's office, and, he was getting a tax review, right? And so as he argued with the tax assessor, here's what happened to this man who was a specialist in his field. The longer we argued, the more stubborn he became. We're on page 112 and 113. So I decided to avoid the argument, and here's what he did. And I just want everybody, what Sharita said was pack the principles and lessons. But in this specific situation, here's the lesson. What he did, I call it diplomacy. I call it tact. He says, I decided to just shut the argument down and change the subject. And I get his appreciation. What I want everyone to understand is every human being wants to be validated, and they all want to feel a sense of importance. If you take anything away from this, take that you got to appreciate people. He said, hey, I suppose this matter is very petty in comparison to, all the real important issues that you deal with. He even said, listen, I also have a background in taxes, but it just came from reading books. You're out in the field on the front line. And I wish I had a job like yours so I could master this trait. And he said, I meant every word that I said to this man. He said the inspector straightened up in his chair and leaned back and began to talk about his work for a long time, right? And he left, and he advised the gentleman that he would consider the problem further. But the bottom line is, when he called him 3 days later, he said, "Hey, I've decided to leave your tax return exactly how it was filed." See, the tax inspector was demonstrating one of the most common human frailties. He wanted a feeling of importance. And as long as the other gentleman argued with him, right, and they're fighting for authority, it's friction. And so, it's just so amazing how hatred is never ended by hatred, only by love. This is from Buddha. Misunderstandings is never ended by an argument, only by tact and diplomacy, right? And this is an amazing lesson. So thank you guys for bearing through that. I just think that was so important. This principle, the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Any closing remarks before we move on to our second principle? This was awesome, right? Avoid disagreement, control your temper, distress your instinct to be disagreeable, listen first, look for areas of agreement, be honest. Just some great principles with number one. Any closing thoughts?
Well, the bottom line is sometimes you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward, and just learning to be a good listener and identify with the other person, seeing it through the lens of the other person instead of your own lenses.
Yes, absolutely. And so we move into the second principle is like, a sure way of making enemies and how to avoid it. And it's this whole concept of condemning people and telling them, hey, you're wrong. What did you get from this, Pastor Tammy? I said, this is so important. What did you get from this second, section of how to win friends and influence people? A sure way of making enemies and how to avoid it. Anything that comes to you?
Well, one of the things that you just spoke about is condemnation and condemning people for their wrongs. A lot of times when we get to a certain level in our lives and we get a little knowledge and we experience a little success and we think we know something, and, we get on our high horse, and the minute people make a mistake or can't do something as well as we can do something, then comes condemnation. And we want to show that I know and I'm good and I'm better, which is a lose-lose situation. And so it's important to make sure that even, in the midst of, we all have shortcomings. We all have things that we don't get right, but to continue to encourage people, have empathy, and make sure that we take the high road and help those people along the way.
Absolutely. I get really excited. We our job is not to read the book for everyone. It's just to point out these principles and hopefully inspire you guys to invest in this content, these manuscripts, and empower yourselves, but, it's so detailed, Sharita, this whole idea of, I'm trying to put this thing together. It's like you make enemies by telling people they're wrong, but then how therapeutic it is and how diplomatic it is to accept your failures and your mistakes quickly with enthusiasm. And he talks about, if someone else is wrong, more importantly, right, and you want to bring that up, how tactful is it to say, now, hey, I may be wrong, because I frequently am, but let's examine the situation. Like, I know you're wrong in my mind, but instead of attacking you and saying, hey, you're wrong, how much more powerful is it for me to say, hey, listen, wait a minute, I might be wrong, right? Because I am often, but let's talk about this a little deeper. Let's examine some facts. What do you get about the phraseology, the psychology behind this? These approaches that, because here's a key word, disarming, disarming individuals and having an understanding attitude. How important is that?
It's very important. I have 2 friends that immediately come to mind, 2 of which happen to be males that say things like that. Well, I could be wrong, but, and right after that, but you already know where they're going with it. And so it's wisdom in that if I take away the fight to say if I'm right or you're wrong, it immediately opens up a room and a space where you could feel comfortable. And so if I'm wise, and that's the whole thing, what like winning arguments and all of that, the wisdom is how do we come to a resolve? What is the intention of what we are looking for? What is the goal here? And so if we could get our emotions out of the way, especially as women, you know, we're more the emotional creatures. And so if we could get our emotion out of the way and be able to see how can I still get to my destination? Can I get to my destination with saying, hey, I might be wrong. You know what? You know what? You are right. But have you considered maybe looking at it this way? And using even words of, well, I feel like, as opposed to saying, well, you did this. And because you did this, this is what happened. And so being able to take away the trigger words that may cause, you know, problems, and just coming together and finding how can I be softer to get you to feel, you know, better into listening to what I have to say, and that way you can get to where you actually want to go.
Good stuff. Good stuff. It says when we are wrong, we may admit it to ourselves. And if we are handled gently and tactfully, we may admit it to others and even take pride in our frankness and broad-mindedness. But if someone else is trying to ram the unpalatable fact down our throat, it's very hard to digest. And so I asked you, Pastor Sean, you've been married for 50 years, and how is it possible to display this amount of diplomacy consistently with people that you love? Isn't it easy to slip up sometimes? I mean, is it difficult to be consistent with this science, with this art? Because I want to ask you something before you answer that question. That's the question. Ben Franklin said, I got to a point, I was so rude and so judgmental. I was always putting people in their place. I got to the point I made it a rule. I forbade myself to use any expression in the language that imported a fixed opinion. I think that's very important. You know, he would use words like I imagine and things like that. He denied himself the pleasure of contradicting people. Just stuff like that. How do you make that a permanent practice, especially when you've been with someone for so many decades?
First of all, it takes discipline. And it takes, personal development as well, because there's some things that we've been taught, and maybe you might not have an example, a model to follow. I use words like, I hear you saying, because now it takes the defense from it instead of giving my interpretation of what you said. I make it clear, this is what I hear you saying. Is there something else you're saying? And that reduces the defense. It takes the edge off. It helps him to hear it from a different perspective. Like, yeah, she's listening to me. And so it's important, once again, that people know that they're being respected, especially in a relationship, and heard. And
show respect to the other person. I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, so often in relationships, people are disrespected, dismissed. And, it seems to be a pattern in relationships. I often say, how do you disrespect somebody you love? And it's got to be taught before it could be caught. That's the bottom line. You know what you know, but you don't know what you don't know.
Can y'all pass the virtual collection plate? What's that Cash App? What's your PayPal? I mean, this is some good stuff. I'm telling you something. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say you're wrong. Don't do that. It's what it is. It's abuse. It's verbal abuse, and I think in certain ways we could all be guilty of it. In the heat of battle, but it just takes practice and new habits. And again, I used a very harsh word in the beginning, but if you don't care about these things, I think that makes you a loser in life. If you don't care about these things, but if you can see, man, I want to be better. I want to use more love and more tact and more diplomacy. I want to be more respectful. I want to make people feel good as I'm communicating with them to get to end results. I want to acknowledge other people. I want to put myself in another person's shoes and try to empathetically understand their expressions and their opinions. Why does this person feel that way? And that's a beautiful thing. And I think you become very harsh when you can't see that development. If you're not willing to take that journey, and we're willing to take that journey. So I'm very proud of this team, and we're teaching this stuff. Guys, let's see if we can knock out one more part of this section here, because it's also saying, hey, listen, Tammy, if you're wrong, just admit it. And admit it quickly and enthusiastically. And what I love about this is that it's not so much that it's the proper thing to do for that person, that other third party or second party, but it's self-empowering. You wind up walking away with real self-esteem, real healthy pride, and you don't lose anything. You don't feel beat up, but you have the courage to admit, not even with humility, but strength, quickly and enthusiastically, hey, I was wrong. Why is that so therapeutic to do for yourself, Tammy, and for those that you're communicating with? As opposed to excuses.
As opposed to excuses. Yes. I think that immediately, quickly, admitting that you're wrong is a huge testament to your character. To say that, you know what, I'm wrong. I can admit it. And not just admit it to yourselves, but admitting it to other people.
Absolutely.
You absolutely want to do that. Not only is it good for you, but it's good for others. Again, and it just creates an environment, especially as a leader, to be able to set yourself aside and say, you know what, I was wrong. I didn't get it right this time. I'm not perfect, but guess what? I'm going to get it better next time. To be able to do that and set that example to the people that are following you, to say, wow, if she can admit she's wrong publicly and privately with a good attitude, to quickly admit it, not let it linger on for days and then finally come back, well, I was wrong. No, right away admit it. I was wrong. I didn't get it right this time, but guess what? We're going to make it right. And those people that are following you will respect you more. They will admire you more and appreciate you being able to set that example.
And right on time, Gabrielle Lee with a long poetic message when her sponsor is speaking. So consistent, and we appreciate you so much, Gabrielle. Yes, Ms. Miller said. Listen, guys, this is so powerful. Speak, Pastor Tammy Durden, speak. Okay, now we see where the alliances lie. And so my thing is this, Sharita, Dr. Atkins, how do you feel about this? I mean, how important is this? Have you ever had situations like this where, either you yourself or dealing with someone else, the difference between making those excuses or just coming out there emphatically and courageously and just literally with enthusiasm? Why is that so important, Pastor Sean? And then close out with you, Sharita.
Well, one of the things why people don't do it, because pride comes and then the fall. And people are so prideful, and they're worried about their reputation, not about how they make a person feel, but about what's in it for them, how it makes me feel. And I think that people have to have that, I always call it that come to yourself moment, to understand you're not always right. And it's okay to say, I made a mistake. I messed up. I apologize. It's okay to take ownership for what you do. And so many people are uncomfortable with that because they're worried about what people are going to think.
And that takes us back to, some of our original masterpieces when we tried to get people to understand from Deepak Chopra, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, let your triggers and your foundation be not object referral, what people are thinking and saying and doing and criticism, but the internal self-referral. When that self-referral is bulletproof, when you know that you know that you know, and your self-esteem and your self-love, your self-perception, your self-image, your self-confidence, when it has been worked on and it is rock solid, when you error, you can then have that expression because you're not worrying about criticism. You're just worrying about the salvation of your own mind and your own soul. So it's so powerful. And so, Sharita, I say to you, they say that there's a certain degree of satisfaction in having the courage to admit one's errors. That is so beautiful. It's not only clears the air of guilt and defensiveness, it often helps solve the problem created in the error. And he said, my eagerness to criticize myself took all the fight out of the enemy, the other person. You know, what do you say about that?
I think that's powerful because one, it makes people feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
If you let someone know that, you know what, I messed up and let me make it clear now, as Pastor Tammy said, not lingering, but then, okay, I had a moment, like I was wrong. Like I was wrong. I think people gain more trust in that because if you create this portrayal that you're always right and you always know, there's really no need to talk to you. Like there's always going to be this wall because someone is always going to think they're right. And so the moment you come and say, you know what, I was wrong, I apologize, it makes them feel more comfortable in speaking to you. So for you as the individual, when you can say that, you grow. You can allow yourself to say, you know what, I don't have to hide behind a facade. I don't have to act like I know everything. But in that maturity, you grow and you allow other people to now be a part of what you're doing. Like as a leader, when people can see your human side and know that you don't always have it figured out, they're oftentimes more likely to follow. Like that's a real person right there. I can follow you. I can rock with you because, I can see where you're coming from. I can see that you're honest. And that helps you in life as a whole. And know, hey, we're figuring this thing out together and let's be whole. Let's be real with one another. That's a real relationship. You can't have a real relationship if you can't be honest and admit when you're wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope you guys are getting something from this around the world, all the different states and all the different countries and the millions of people chiming in to the T.O.P. Intergalactical Book Club. We will try to display this in multiple languages for all of you out there across the world and different ethnicities and different cultures, but we just haven't got to that point. But you can Cash App us, and you can, we got the screen. We'll pull up with our PayPal information. Gabrielle Lee says, growth and development is important to you and others. That's right. Love it, Shrita Leon. Here's the deal, guys. We're going to close out with the final aspect of today's session. We're talking about how to win people to your way of thinking. That's valuable. How do you win people to your way of thinking? We're going to cover part 4 and one nice gust of wind. It says a drop of honey. A drop of honey. How to win people to your way of thinking, right? It's like beginning in a friendly way. The power of compliments. Again, the power of diplomacy. The power of being tactful. The power of losing yourself and putting yourself in someone else's shoes and figuring out what they like, what inspires them, what motivates them. This kindness of heart. Let me start with you, Dr. Atkins. What did you get from this final session that we'll talk about tonight? A drop of honey. Again, I would have to think, being married and a very happy, productive, amazing marriage with 2 beautiful children and a church empire and all these businesses and all this money you guys make and all this kind of stuff you guys do, you had to drop some honey from here to there from time to time. So how did that work? How did that work? How does that work?
There's this saying that you can catch more bees with honey than you can with vinegar. And it's allowing your words to be seasoned with salt. Thinking about what you're going to say before you say it, and not acting from an emotional perspective, but acting from a heartfelt perspective, a heart of compassion, a heart of hearing the other person and understanding exactly what they're saying, or empathize. You might not agree, but being able to empathize with them.
Beautiful. It's just so special. What a great way to close out, guys. I want to hear from you other champions. What does it mean to you to communicate and to get people to feel you and to follow you and to be able to impact them with your way of thinking, but doing it with a bit of honey, doing it with that love? And what does that mean to you, Sharita?
Well, I was actually thinking about this earlier, and when you can be softer and compassionate, people are more likely to hear you out. If I come and say, "Well, this is what we're gonna do," that's just it. If you don't like it, oh well, you're not getting anywhere. But when you're able to tap, especially as women, if you're able to tap into your feminine energy and literally be alluring and being soft to let someone else feel as if they are making the decision, you're able to get them to hear you out and flow. Here, oh, I hear you, okay, and just flow with it. But you know that as you're edifying or you're listening, you have a route that you're taking to get to where you need to go. And so with that, it's being able to tap into what is actually important, not what I need you to get, and being, being like this real militant person, but literally being able to be soft. And that's the thing, when you tap into that space, someone, if you're someone that has a strong personality and you come off strong, people don't want to hear you. But if you're able to literally feel like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing, I don't know, but what do you think? And I think you would be amazing at this, and you're edifying the other person, and you're soft and you're kind and you're doing all of this, they want to hear, like, oh my gosh, you make me feel good. And so when you're able to do that and take your emotions out of the way, like Pastor Sean said, but tap into the logical side, which is like your masculine energy, to have a plot of where you're going, but do it in a soft way to get to where you need to go, everybody wins.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. That's really, really good stuff. Love the way you describe the logical side. And so, Dr. Durden, I want to ask you, it talks about use gentleness, use friendliness, demonstrate it time and time again. What's your creative thought on this whole concept as we get ready to close out?
Oftentimes it's not what you say, but how you say it. The approach that you take, the energy that you put behind it. You can be saying something that's very true and very necessary, but it's how you say it. If you're harsh with it, if your tone is harsh, it can totally come off the wrong way. And a lot of people try to hide behind their personalities to say, I'm an alpha female, I'm strong, I'm this, and I'm just real. I just tell it like it is. No, so many people, put that out there all the time. And a lot of it is fear-based because they don't want to look weak. They don't want to empathize. They don't want to be soft. They don't want to be gentle because, oh, you're not running over me. I'm not weak. You got the wrong one. And so all of that kind of stuff. But if you take a different approach to it, again, it's not what it's very important to make sure that you're communicating that message in a way that's going to empower that person. And you'll be surprised how those sweet, kind, gentle words will get you what you want. I'm just saying, Sharita talked about that feminine energy, but it's just very important how you say what you say to get what the results that you want.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Guys, look out for that feminine energy. You're learning a lot tonight. Giving you a lot of tips. You're very welcome, gentlemen.
It'll change your life.
And so, hey, and it actually will. So, I just think this was awesome, guys. We're talking about how to win friends and influence people, relationships, leadership, business, how to cultivate your character to be more attractive, to be more effective, to be more efficient. And at the end of the day, guys, we are advocates for health and wellness. We are advocates for financial freedom. We are leaders in the world of entrepreneurship. And so we need these gifts and with these tools. And I say leaders read and continue to empower yourselves. That's why we come here every single week as a collective to give you our discernment and our discretion on these masterpieces. Okay. And so for me, just listening and being a part of this has been an honor and a discretion. I just think that an honor and a distinction. I just think that I have just actually went up a notch from just listening to you guys break down these segments. I mean, it's just really, really powerful. It's really powerful. It starts in the heart. Everybody just have a bigger heart. If you love more and you care more and you have more empathy and more compassion, these principles will be like, it's like they're coming back home. the coming back home and making you who you're supposed to be before the world made us so hard and just threw us off, right? So Ms. Miller says, thank you for this conversation. This is rich. You are very welcome. I want to thank you all for watching. Again, like this broadcast, share it through your profile pages across the country. Shout out again to the team of possibilities and all of Facebook Nation. It's been an honor. We came, we saw, we conquered, and we will see you back next week. Love you guys. Peace.